Okay. Hi, everyone. Anyone that's listening, my name is Julia, and I am a TBB fellow this year, meaning I was an alum myself of the program 6 years ago and have since led a trip as a program leader in Latin America and am now on staff side in the US doing recruitment and marketing and administrative matters more so. And today we are talking with 3 TBB alumni about how they fundraise to make their gap year a success. So I will let them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their program year as well. Let's start. Meg, you want to go?
I'll start.
Okay, Johnny.
I'm Johnny, and I actually just finished TBB 2017. I went to Ghana, Thailand, Cambodia, Ecuador, Peru, and DC, and had the time of my life. I think my favorite unit was education, which was in Ecuador, but my favorite country was Ghana. That's a little bit about me. I live in Tacoma, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. My name's Meg. I'll do my little intro. I graduated from TBB, I guess it was 2014 now. It feels far away, but also really recent, so that's crazy. I guess it's been 3-ish years. Wow. And I liked what Johnny did. I went to, I'll reiterate where I went. I went to Ecuador, Peru, China, Cambodia, India, and South Africa. And I have to say, I kind of was blown away by each country and each unit that we really looked at. And people would ask me, what's your favorite country, Meg? And I could never answer that question because each country was so vastly different and unique and amazing and troubling all at once. And I still am reflecting and learning from my year, for sure.
I'm James. I went on the year after Meg, and I graduated in 2015. And it kind of sounds like we all had a little bit different trips because I went to Ecuador, Peru, Thailand, Cambodia, India, and South Africa, and stopped in DC in the end. I think I have gotten very similar questions to what's your favorite country, and the response I usually give is that the group became more family-like. So nearing the end, those are my favorite countries, but it wasn't necessarily based on the country itself. So it's a little bit about me.
Great answers. So like I said, all 3 of these alumni have had experience raising money to support their own gap year. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they did this and what made TBB such an amazing program that it made them want to do this in the first place. So I guess my first question is how each of you stumbled upon TBB and what stood out so much that you were like, I need to make this happen before I go to college?
What order?
So I kind of decided middle of junior year in high school that I wanted to at least take some time off. It wasn't very clear what I wanted to do. So I just started looking into things that I could spend time doing, and I stumbled upon the gap year category, and I kind of got excited about that. So I started, instead of applying to colleges, just looking at gap years. And I stumbled on a few that looked really interesting and found TBB finally. And just right off the bat, I think the pure number of countries really caught my eye. And then digging into the program details, me and my dad at the time, I think a little bit more than I, was just getting excited because of the topics that we were going to learn about and the kind of style of travel and learning that TBB provides. So once we found it and once we kind of digested the material and the curriculum, there wasn't really much turning back.
I think for me, I liked how you really dived into the curriculum, James, because I think for me, to be perfectly honest, I was a little bit surprised. I didn't fully know what the curriculum was when I was first venturing out. And for me, what caught my attention was I always really wanted to travel, and I think I had an adventurous spirit to some extent in me. Perhaps it was being in rural Vermont and not and wanting to see what all these books were actually talking about and wanting to get out of a little bit of a bubble. And I am so grateful for where I did grow up, but I just felt there was so much of this world I was hearing about, but I hadn't seen any of it. I wanted to go find it. But I got really excited by the word purpose and the abundance of places we were able to go, because I also didn't know where to start in traveling the world, or who knows what I was thinking, I guess. But I think that was kind of it. I wanted to see everything and do everything and had no idea where to start. So I think I was really inspired by TBB's message on that front. But the word development didn't surface until I was in Ecuador.
I think you were probably thinking beyond borders.
Yeah. There it is, Johnny. There it is.
Cool. Well, I found TBB kind of the classic way. I was just searching for gap years online. I kind of knew that I wanted to take a gap year, and I had actually applied to a specific program to study Chinese in the middle of my senior year, and I found out in the middle of June that I wasn't accepted into this program. So I didn't want to go to college. I had applied and I decided to defer from my school, but I just didn't have that passion yet to go. That was the biggest thing. I could have gone, my studies were fine, but my heart was really in going abroad and studying a language and a culture that was different from what I'd grown up with. And when I found TBB, I remember it didn't meet every single thing that I was looking for initially, because what I wanted originally was to be in one specific place. That way I could really dig deep into a culture and into the language. But TBB's academic curriculum and focus really did catch my eye, because I knew that the people that were going to be going on this trip were going to have similarities to me, and just really wanting to critically analyze the world was the biggest one. And TBB talks about that a lot. So I applied for the program on July 31st, which was actually the very last day you could apply for TBB for the upcoming year. And I knew that I was going to have to fundraise. So I'll get into how I did that later on as we talk today. Yeah.
Okay, that's a perfect segue. You said you knew you were going to have to. And so I guess looking at a program like this and thinking immediately like, oh man, I'm going to have to do a lot of fundraising. What were your initial thoughts? Did it seem like it was going to be a huge uphill battle, or fairly doable? And then what was your first step in sort of planning out how you were going to fundraise?
Okay. So for me, I kind of have an interesting financial situation. For my family, my mom and dad, we weren't like financially able to afford me going on this trip. However, I have extended family who are very much willing to help me finance my education. But for me personally, it was that I wanted to finance my gap year as much as I possibly could. So in the summer of after my senior year, I made about $6,000 working. And then in about 3 weeks, I was able to raise $5,000. And the way that I did that was by making a list of tons of people who I was going to ask to donate to me. So I wrote a letter explaining kind of what I was doing during my senior year, what my thoughts were for this upcoming year, why I'd chosen TBB, and what I felt I was going to get out of this. That was the biggest thing, how this was going to help grow me. And I used the online platform Indiegogo, which I'm sure you'll hear about if you're considering doing TBB fundraising. I think it was kind of that really strong persistence of setting this goal and trying to work toward it as much as possible. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's what I got right now. I'll probably add on later.
Yeah, please do.
I think it's kind of funny that Meg's on this talk as well, because when I was first getting into looking on how to fundraise, I was like, have people fundraise before? So I looked at like TBB on Indiegogo, and I saw a couple profiles And then I saw Meg's and I was like, oh, so people can fundraise and it has been done. And funny enough, I kind of based my whole fundraising campaign off of hers. I don't know if you do that or not, but we had similar perks, and I kind of took an outline of yours and just made it my own. And I did something similar to Johnny as well, and I wrote a lengthy email kind of explaining why I wanted to, why it would benefit me to take this year, what specifically would benefit me in TBB. And then I started formulating a list of people to send it to. And because I needed to fundraise most of the money, I even started like putting stuff on bulletin boards and convenience stores. And for a while I was like, all right, it's not really doing anything. And then like about midway through the summer, after I had launched my campaign, random donations started popping up for $5 or $10 just from little ads that I had put in coffee shops and different things like that. So I didn't think it would go a long way, but it ended up being about $3,000 worth of the fundraising that I did just from random community members. So
Wow.
I was pleased that that aspect worked out.
So let's hear what led the way, how you did this, that people started to base their own off of.
Oh, wow. Pressure on in the best of ways, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so I saw TBB, and I can't say that I'm a whiz at making money in any shape or form, but as I was reading about TBB, I just decided, like, this, for whatever reason, this is the program that I want to try to do. And I looked at the price tag and I was like, oh, that's intimidating for me. And I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, well, I can give you love and support and make you food. And my dad was like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, is there any other program you can find? And something about that just really put a fire under me. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to do this. And so I think I really just led the way with, it may sound cheesy, but my passion. I was like, this is something that I want to do. And I want to push myself for this. And I want to go all in. And, you know, maybe I don't make it, but I'm going to learn something along the way. I like somehow, without having the word process yet, was like, this is a process that I'm willing to take a stand on. And so what that looked like was definitely utilizing my community that I really am so grateful for it, love and appreciate. I definitely just vocalized what I was doing, what I wanted to do. I think I wrote up some things I put on my Indiegogo page, and then really just committed to it. I didn't leave the page just sitting by itself. I was really thinking about it and engaged with it. And I really turned on this sense that, like, the world is full of surprises, and this can be a part of your life in all aspects. You know, I'd talk about it with anyone and everyone, and not just necessarily looking for money. Like, it was just exciting to be able to talk about what I was experiencing. And I think that led me to a lot of really cool people and amazing conversations that I wasn't really expecting necessarily. Like, I just bumped into them, and then maybe that would result in $5, and that was pretty powerful. And I think I love James's story of the, you know, 3,000 raised by people you didn't necessarily know or clearly or whatnot. It is a surprise almost, because to me, it really felt like the money's out there, and it's just, if you have a will to try to find it, I don't know, it's pretty powerful. It was really powerful to see us come together, if that makes any sense. But I also had a lot of fun. I made a little video. I think my campaign was called Jumping Beyond Borders. And so for every dollar raised, I would jump once. So I did result in jumping 10,150 times. And I filmed each of these jumps.
Oh, wow.
I made little videos. So my calves were incredibly they were of a new form as well.
And this stems from your experience with basketball, right?
Yeah, I was playing basketball at the time, and I was like, what do I do a lot? And I was like, well, I guess I jump.
Oh, gosh. Right.
Yeah, so let's get down into what was the platform, what were your initial ideas, what did you end up with, your, I guess, final product of the fundraising?
You said the platform, like what you exactly
I guess
did?
for you, I know how, like, form of media or way of launching your campaign, way of gathering people to see it as well.
Right. Well, I definitely utilized social media. That was a big thing. I posted, I made like a big post that was also easy for people to read on Facebook. And then I tagged probably 100 people in that post. And I tagged people who I knew would like be willing to donate to me. I tagged my teachers because then my teachers' friends were gonna see. I tagged like my parents' friends, et cetera. So I tagged anybody who I thought, okay, this can make a connection to me somehow, raising support and getting money for this program. I also asked my neighbor who's in film to help me make a video, which I then posted on my Indiegogo Facebook or Indiegogo and my Facebook page, et cetera. And I think that helped a lot. And then the letters, those were kind of the three big platforms that I used.
That's great, especially that you utilize the resources at your tips. So like going toward your neighbor and asking for his help as a form of investment as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think building off of that, I did a lot of prep work before I went live with my Indiegogo. And I'd say eventually my Indiegogo was my most major platform that really kind of consolidated all the fundraising into one place. But that was linked to Facebook and email and as many other outsources and outlets as I could think of. And I'm not very great at social media, if I'm being perfectly honest. So that was definitely a struggle, but I liked what Johnny was saying too. As I'm thinking back, I really did. That was my brother. It's his birthday. But as I was saying, reflecting back, using what I did have access to. So like my dad had gone to film school, so he helped me like film some of the video clips. My mom was kind of into it. My mom was into writing, so she helped me do some editing of like my little write-ups and perks and all this sort of stuff on the side. And a lot in basketball, so I somehow incorporated that into all of this stuff. So I think trying to figure out what do I have accessible, not what do I not have around me. Just kind of show who you are for real was something that I tried to tap into. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Kind of going off that a little bit in a previous comment that you made, like about the will to do it. I think starting off by saying it wasn't easy for me to do it. And a bunch of my friends just were like, oh, you're not applying to school, so like you should have more time. And I was like, yeah, but this is like applying to school. It takes up a lot of time. I think I spent a lot of time as well prep work before I went live. And unfortunately, you could only go live in a Indiegogo campaign for 3 months, I think it is, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was like, if it's only going to be up for 3 months, like I got to work for it and make sure it's like well done. So I found somebody that I knew who could shoot a video, and my dad is into writing, so he helped me kind of edit it all out and make a outline of what the trip is about and what I'm going on it for. And then I sent thousands of emails. Just talking with people, explaining it more, reaching out to people. Interestingly enough, I don't know, looking back, I never used social media. And I think that's something that's different about mine. I'm not really sure why I didn't, but maybe I should have in retrospect. I think it would have been easier for me. But So I never used Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. And I send out the platform, the Indiegogo platform, all through email and like little posters and stuff in coffee shops. And it worked out well. I met my goal. But it was a constant, like, didn't leave the page some days and was sending emails and responding to people for hours. So we'll get a little bit more into that as we go.
So definitely a full commitment.
Yeah.
Right up front.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that 3 months on Indiegogo has changed because my platform is still open and I don't know how to close it. So I think you can fundraise on Indiegogo for much more than 3 months.
So whatever you're getting right now, you're going to donate to some other new student, right?
That's right. No, it's still at the same amount.
Actually, for everyone that's watching, we recommend using a different site now, which I should have told you guys. It's called generosity.com, but it's essentially the same sort of platform as Indiegogo, but it lends itself toward what we do better.
I think that is what I use, but it's attached to Indiegogo, isn't it?
It might be. I need to look into that more. But yeah, we actually have students this year making videos because of you guys as well. So I'll share those with you when they're ready. Okay, so my next question is, and feel free to jump in with more in-depth detail about what it is you did or the work that you had to put into it, what your summer looked like. But if you could do anything differently, what would you do and why? And if not, then great.
I guess just jumping into it, I don't know exactly what I would do differently at this point, only because it's all now happened and it is what it is. But to some extent, and I think maybe James alluded to this, to say it wasn't hard isn't fair either. It was challenging, and there were definitely some moments where I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it, if this was actually going to come together. And I think there was a really like final push and surge towards the end of my campaign that made me tip over into like, okay, I did it. This is going to happen. But definitely days where I just felt I did feel kind of unguided. I felt like I was just on an ice skating rink and I didn't know where to go or how to be better or progress faster or do something differently. And so I think, if possible, having someone who can definitely be like, I don't know, an advisor maybe, or someone who can help you with just a little bit of structure, if nothing more than just to be like, I believe in you, you can do it, you can do it. That would be, I think, a really positive influence. Because I remember I was asking a teacher one day, like, is there any way you can help me with this and just think through it? And I realized in that moment it wasn't really a fair question to ask her because she was teaching all of these classes and it was like adding on one of her students' fundraising picks was like too much for her at that moment. And I was okay, I really have to do this. So on one hand, it was a great learning curve. On another hand, it was hard. So now, but here I am. So I'm grateful that it was hard in a lot of ways because I learned a lot. But if there was support and an advisor available, I would say that would be a very, very cool thing to look into.
I think I would have reached out to organizations in my community that I knew gave scholarships to people studying abroad. For example, the Rotary Foundation, I know that they financed people to study abroad every year. That's like a thing in my community. But I wonder if they would have done a private donation to my gap year. Additionally, I thought about sending an email to like the Tacoma News Tribune because I knew that the head of the News Tribune and asking if I could write something in the newspaper or maybe send him letters throughout my gap year to post in the newspaper, kind of be like a series of a local person traveling. The biggest thing was that I just ran out of time. Like I said, I applied for this program. I confirmed this program on August 7th and I left on September 12th. So everything happened so quickly. So I think considering that I only had 3 weeks, and I really focused on fundraising during those 3 weeks. I got a lot done, but I think the biggest thing was I wish that I just had more time. I had a friend who sold her car.
Wow.
Also, she was committed to doing this. And additionally, while I was fundraising on Facebook, one of the girls in my group, Abby, was also fundraising. And so I commented one day that like, hey, my friend is also trying to fundraise, and I had somebody donate $500 to her. So don't be afraid to reach out to fellow people who you know are going to do TBB that you meet somehow, and helping them fundraise too. It can be a group effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's really great. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I think the first thing, in retrospect, I should have used social media. Just putting that first and foremost out there. But then I think, kind of building off of the advisor point, this is a great first step, just to hear people's past experiences and that it can happen, and that everyone kind of went through it differently. So like whether it's the ability to maybe reach out and contact an alum and see how they fundraised, or setting up like one Skype session for the people who are fundraising and walk through a little bit like, this is what people have done in the past, this is what has worked for people, and then you can feel free to contact them and get any more information. I think that would have been helpful. And most of my campaign did come from someone in the past, so just utilizing the resources that are there.
Great. Did you guys stay in contact with the people that donated to you? Was there any sort of, kickback that you gave them in terms of sharing your trip with them?
Yeah. You want to go, Meg?
No, you go for it. I'd love to hear what you did.
So I did like perks to my donation to try to make people like reach certain amounts. So if it was $25 donation, then I would give them like a subscription to my blog, but my blog eventually just turned into emails after every country. If they donated $75, I sent them a postcard from the 3 core countries. So that was Ghana, Thailand, and Ecuador. If they donated $100, I invited them to my presentation of learning at my house. And if it was $250, it was a cooking at my house, as well as everything else. And then if it was $500, it's making them a personal piece of art. Yeah. So that was kind of the different levels. And I think the majority were probably about 75, which was a lot of postcards. I wrote about 30 in my countries. But, I stuck to it. And some people were like, whoa, John, you're doing way too much. And I was like, well, this is the promise that I made, so I'm going to do it. So.
Good for you.
Yeah, I think that was something that I really enjoyed, and also that was tricky, was that, I did a similar to what Johnny was saying, a perk system in which I think I had my perks grow in each other, and I can't remember exactly which number amount went with which, but I do remember there being a postcard, a presentation, a blog subscription, photos. I think there was I'll email you a bunch of photos. And I think I did something too that it would build. So if you did for example, $50 perk, then you would get the 25.5 and everything prior to it. And that was a lot. And I think, but it was good too. I would say thinking about the perk, also try to really figure out the realistic, what can you really fulfill and complete and give to people? Because if you do have 80 postcards to write and you're rushing through airports, be ready for it. That's the thing. But I do think it's worthwhile, because it was kind of cool to think about having it. For me, it constantly reminded me of the community that helped me go on this trip. And every time I wrote these postcards, there were some nights where it was really late, and I'd be like, oh, okay, here we go. But at the end of it was like, wow, I wouldn't really be here without that person. So it's awesome to write this postcard. I'm not sure if that was responding to the question, but
totally
mine.
So I had a very similar campaign with perks as well, and it's they build it off each other. So I ended up having to write a lot of postcards, and I sent out media projects too as one of the perks. And I can't really remember what they all were, but I know that for some of the bigger donations, there was one perk where I would take a photo with someone's face on a stick, like in front of different things, and it was like me and them hanging out all over the world.
It's a really great idea.
Seemed to get a lot of
It's great.
a lot of action. So I think coming up with clever perks helped me. And at times it was tedious sitting there writing letters on planes and have it bump or something like that, and just being like, why am I doing this? But I think cycling back, it was meaningful, and I got to provide like my own experience to the people that helped me get there. And I thought that was very like fulfilling and kind of satisfying.
Something else that comes to mind, I remember reaching out to a local newspaper, the Times Argus, and they weren't able to give me a donation, but they were like, we'd be really interested in you writing us an article as you travel. And that was really cool because on my trip, I was able to write, I think it was once a month, a little travel blurb or whatnot. And they would print it or I think put it online. I wasn't there to see what came out, but I do remember getting a few emails every now and again of like, just saw your article. That was so cool. And really like strange because I was like, wow, that's actually happening back home. But it was also cool to have people be in the loop. And I think something that fundraising pulled out that I wasn't expecting, was like an indirect cool thing, was it did push me to share more with my community about what was happening. And I think a lot of community members really valued that, just because life can be so busy and overwhelming, but when you see photos being put up or you have an email from someone unprompted, it's kind of cool or it's kind of interesting. But sometimes I was like, oh, I don't know if people want to see all this. Is it too much? I don't want to clutter their inboxes. But most responses I got were people were excited to see what I was up to. It's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I think, yeah, that was a cool indirect thing that happened.
I think that's really great. You're all kind of mentioning lots of indirect things that you wouldn't necessarily think about in terms of just overall resilience and knowing what it takes to reach your goal, and then also connecting and communicating more about your own experience to community members, which I think it's another way of preparing you for a trip like this, to be able to go through something so challenging and meet it and feel more ready because you've earned it. One of my last questions before I can open it up for any other things is, what advice do you have for students this year and students to come who, like you, see this opportunity as something that they cannot miss, but also cannot afford, and need to do some work to get to go on it?
I'll start. So I think something that kind of helped tip the scales a little bit in my fundraising was being a little bit more vulnerable and deciding that I can talk to someone about it and I can make the proposition or ask for money, but if they can't or if it doesn't work for them, just turning it into a conversation, I felt was something that I didn't see as almost respectful at first, but then just being very open to I can't help you at this time, and then just starting to talk about it more. And there's a line and there's some gray area in there, but I think being a little bit more vulnerable and reaching out to more people helped me fundraise a great deal.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I remember asking for money always made me really uncomfortable And some people have a gift for being able to ask for money, and it's fine, and it's fluid, and it's a no or a yes, and you move on. But for me, it was always this huge ordeal, like, oh my gosh, now I have to ask. But finding that openness to really shift into just, yeah, it's okay if the answer is no, I can't give you money. But what's more interesting is to actually talk about what you're doing, and to lead with that. And I guess kind of segueing, like, advice is tricky because each of us come, I think, from such different situations and dynamics and skill sets and environments. You know, it's hard to give the perfect golden answer that's going to just, woo, send you on your way to making a successful fundraising campaign. But to really, I think the thing that I will say is think about the trip and think about, for real, if it's something you want to push for. And my mom, I think, as many others say, like, all right, Meg, the money thing, you're going to cross that bridge as you come to it, step by step. You know, my dad was the bigger picture of, like, I don't think you can do that. That's a lot. Da, da, da. But I needed both those voices. And I think to really, if you really want it, I would say go for it. And if you can let yourself think about if you make it or you don't make it, whether or not you're willing to try. And I think that that the experience will be interesting.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot either way.
For sure. And I think that can be hard to be like, well, why would I do it if I don't know that I'm going to make it? And I want to say, if you really believe in it and if you love it, you're going to do it, you're going to make it. And I personally believe that you'd be surprised and you will make it. But maybe sometimes you don't. But I think it's worth it to try. I don't know.
So right before I found TBB, I saw Finding Dory. And I remember still feeling kind of weird about, like, am I gonna do this gap year or am I not? It's like the middle of July and you're behind with, like, Occidental stuff, and that's where I'm going to school, Occidental College. But the line just keeps swimming, stuck with me in a weird way. It's kind of that idea of you have a dream and kind of the way that you see the world currently says, no, that dream's not possible. And the way that other people see the world in your society say that dream's not possible. But just, like, hold on to that spark that tells you to keep going. And, like, you're early in your life. Like, I'm only 19 and I'm sort of thinking about gap year number 2. That's a different story. Not being afraid to take that leap of faith is the biggest thing. Additionally, realize that TBB is not just a gap year to go and party and, like, have a good time before going to college. This is an investment in your education. So if you're, you know, struggling with your parents about, oh, we'd rather use your money to actually help you pay for a college, say, this is an investment in my education. I'm going to be getting experiences and I'm going to learn things during TBB that I can't learn in a school. Those things just can't be taught to you. And you're going to have so many of those experiences. Finally, kind of like what Meg said, it's important to listen to a lot of sides. I had one particular family member who just didn't support me in going on this trip, and he expressed to me how what he really thought I needed to learn during my year was self-sufficiency, of not learning to ask for money. And that really made me challenge whether or not this was something that I wanted to do. However, it was something that I wanted to do. I decided that this was what I wanted to pursue. And I actually kept in touch with him throughout my trip, kind of just keeping him up to date. And while we disagreed in a lot of things that we were talking about, it was a fun exchange to have because it constantly offered me a different perspective. And I think it has come to kind of, it's developed into respect for one another because of that disagreement and just talking about it. So if you're feeling down right now, but you still have that spark, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Well, that's all really, really great advice. And like you said, in terms of, like, learning objectives and that TBB really is an investment in your education. I I really think that this fundraising part is something that you can't be taught in a classroom either. Like going through the motions of raising money and creating a platform and asking people and being okay with asking people and also okay with them saying no. Like these are all life skills that you guys got before even going on TBB. So I think that's really awesome. So if people want to reach out to you guys saying, I need a personal cheerleader or an advisor or someone to just chat about this campaign, are you open to that?
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I am going to end this here unless you guys have any other suggestions.
Go TBB.
Go
Yeah.
TBB.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.